Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series. Take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video will be reviewing the Monster Supplement, Eoth Khalstan's revised Encyclopaedia of Great Animals and Draconic Beings, designed by Daniel K. for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my content, consider using my affiliate links for online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/Rogue Watson. First of all, that's a mouthful. Eoth Khalstan's revised Encyclopaedia of Great Animals and Draconic Beings. Also, if you're trying to find it, obviously I've got links on my written review, but if you're trying to find this product, it's actually, Encyclopedia is spelled A-E, Encyclopaedia of Great Animals and Draconic Beings. Encyclopedia is already kind of a tricky word for people to spell, so it's a tricky thing to use as a title, included in your title. And as cute as it is to have these giant titles, it's kind of hard to find your product like that. So I'm going to kind of open with a bit of a suggestion and criticism there that that's probably too much title for one book. And for the love of goodness, don't change the spelling from the title of what's on the product versus what's actually on the cover here, which I do think is a really great cover. In fact, I think the layout and the art is phenomenal in this book. This is apparently designer's very first product, which I do not believe. I reject that. This is as professional as it gets, in my opinion, in terms of how to create a really good-looking product for veterans that I would see. This is better than a lot of what I would consider to have be a bunch of veterans producing content. It's got great layout, original like sketchbook art, which very much reminded me of like the old Origin of Species, like the idea of explorers and zoologists going out in like the 19th century and actually like, cataloging new creatures and things and writing them down in a book and just based on, sketches and observations and stuff. That was science. And I really like that aspect of molding that into a monster supplement because, let's face it, beasts and dragons, which is wholly what this supplement provides, are probably two of the most boring creature types in Dungeons & Dragons. Beasts are just beasts. They don't have any fantastical things about them. They're supposed to exist naturally in the world, and they've all got, maybe some interesting, unique traits, but in a world full of, beholders and liches and oozes and all these other creatures, like, a fucking lion's just not that interesting. Sorry, lions. And with dragons, they're just way over mind, I think, as a resource, because we've got so many dragons in the monster manual, so many different types, and everything since then has been dragon. There's all kinds of different dragons, and a lot of creators just, it's like obligatory with, you have to produce like, okay, here's the dragon section of the book, because there's dragons can just come in all kinds of flavors. So I was bummed initially when I saw, oh, this is just entirely about beasts and dragons, because those are probably what I would consider the two more boring stat blocks to produce. And yet I really like this book. It's almost 100 pages long. There are over 50 stat blocks here. But it's almost not even about the stat blocks. It's just the way that it's designed that I really, really love. Again, the way that we get all these fun animal facts, the way that it's partially done in this voice of this, bully, explorer slash zoologist character, which I will say, I think I was hoping the designer would go even further with that. I would have loved if this actually did look like literally a sketchbook and had little, sidebar notes or written notes from the actual explorer, maybe even telling this anecdote about how he went off with this troop of people and recorded all these animals, and maybe some of them barely escaped with his lives. In other words, he observed doing other things. Like, that would have gone a really, really long way into really selling this as that kind of a book. But even without that, I think it's still really, really well done. It kind of plays it safe in terms of the same layout as the monster manual, but here's the key: we get original art, which is done by the designer, by the writer. I am insanely jealous of people who are both good at writing and art, by the way. You need to spread that talent shit out. That is not fair. And it is very well done. This is amazing art, and it's all very well written. The fact this is a one-person job to produce all of this is kind of astonishing, frankly. Animal stat blocks, for the most part, they're pretty realistic. You've got some horses. You've got a lot of aquatic animals, actually. There's like hippopotamuses. There's a lot of inspiration from real world creatures, literally like cheetahs and penguins and swordfish, stingray, manta rays, like, again, a lot of kind of real world creatures that maybe don't have an equivalent in the monster manual already, because a lot of you can just take the base stat of something and extrapolate that into something else. But we also get a lot of creatures that are based on like prehistoric beasts that are not dinosaurs, like a lot of Ice Age beasts. For example, the Glyptodon, which is like a giant armadillo, or the giant ground sloth. I'm not sure if the Bronta is one or not. It looks like kind of a prehistoric horse. The Dunkleostis is like a prehistoric fish. So really cool ideas there. And then some of them are based on either myths or from like I looked this one up. So the myth one is like the Auklet, which is like a combination wolf orca creature. That's like an Inuit myth apparently. The Dinganek, I looked this one up on Wikipedia, and it's apparently an entry from a literally like a 19th century or maybe as early 20th century, I think it was early 20th, explorer who had went to Africa and apparently wrote down a meeting with this crazy, like almost prehistoric creature that was this very large. It had, walrus tusks and a spine tail, and it had all these cool traits of different animals. And of course, nobody else can confirm it. Nobody else has seen it since then. So I thought that was a really interesting way to draw something that I had no idea about and provide it as a unique monster stat block. So I think even though it takes, beasts, they're still very interesting. There's a lot of different inspirations here. I'm pretty sure some of the desert ones are from like the Dark Sun monster manual, which is pretty neat. The Inyx and the Murkillet. So things, even though it's beasts, it's not necessarily all, normal beasts, and it's not necessarily just different variations of things we've already seen. Obviously, Giant Leech would be pretty funny because we had a whole campaign character that was based around leeches, so that's a funny stat block. The Catanach here is a really interesting, larger than a Tarrasque creature, and yet it's not a aggressive creature, so it's more of a giant beast of burden. Yes, it can bite, swallow, and destroy whole villages, but you could also just build a village on top of it. And I think the artwork really is what sells this for me. The artwork, the way it's just written to be a lot of really fun, like animal facts, if they're real animals, or just things that really make sense. Even if the stat blocks aren't technically all that exciting. Look at how fucking cute this penguin. And it's just full of like cute penguin facts. Like that's, obviously a penguin's not a very fun stat block, but just reading through it is really, really fun. So really cool idea there. If that's all it was just the beast, honestly, it'd be thumbs up. I think it's pretty fun. I love the sketch art. Even if the stat blocks aren't necessarily that fun, it's just a really cool read. That's only half of the monsters. The other half are all of the dragons. And I'm already kind of down on dragons because I think that, there's already a bunch of dragons out there. We already have a bunch of different types and styles, and they tend to be very similar to one another. They really are just the same base stat block and just reflavored a few things here and there, which is unfortunately what happens here. So we get some interesting dragon variants, especially like the Tianlong, which is the classic kind of Chinese design dragon, where it's the long serpentine body without wings, and this one blasts like radiant and additional fire breath. But if you look at all these stat blocks, they're basically all the same, except it kind of usually switches out maybe one ability, and like their fire breath might be slightly different. But they all have multi-attack, they all have bites, claws, and tails, they all have frightful presence, and really they all have kind of the same legendary actions. In fact, I believe we flip through here, you're going to see the exact same legendary actions for everybody. Detect, tail attack, wing attack, detect, tail attack, wing attack, detect, tail attack, wing attack, all the way through every single one of them. Now, the planar dragons is a cool idea. These are directly inspired and drawn from the different outer planes, so none of them are naturally occurring in the actual material plane. So you've got some that are based on like Mechanus, which is the law plane, which is a dragon that's made up of like gears and stuff. But these are cool ideas. We get cool pictures to go with them, but the stat blocks are basically, again, just the same, and just kind of slightly does their breath attack as something a bit different. But otherwise, the stats and a lot of the stat blocks are pretty much the same. So that's a little disappointing, and it really renders the quantity we get more moot, because they're just all very much they're more like variants rather than having new stat blocks, so the number is a bit inflated. However, the one exception are the layer actions. Every single one of these planar dragons, which I believe there are nearly 20 of them, have unique layer actions, because their layer is, you're probably going to encounter them in that plane. So they all have really cool things that can happen on Initiative 20 that's really flavorful and unique to that zone and that dragon. So, for example, the Gloom Dragon, you can have larvae get spawned near them. You have creatures that just see frightening images, or skeletal arms reach out of the ground and can grab creatures the dragon can see. the Hellfire Worm, fiery portals open up underneath you that you can fall through and take damage, or these bile sacks will explode and cause you to be blinded. All of those are really cool ideas and help make the dragons a lot more unique. I just wish that was more cleverly baked into their actual stat blocks. And instead, it's really it's more like the planes themselves are what's interesting to encounter rather than the dragons are just like, oh, it's a dragon with that kind of a breath weapon, basically. And they're essentially all the same. Also, we only get the adult version, which are all CR14s. You think that by the time you're battling in the outer planes, you're probably higher level. Maybe you should be battling more powerful dragons. But the designer even says, as the narrative person, like, hey, I'm just giving you the adult versions, and you can come up with your own way to make them, kid versions or ancient versions or whatever. That's fine, I guess, but you should know that going forward into this product, is they're all going to be that same like CR 12 to 15 or whatever it is. On top of all that, we're not done yet. It also includes new subclasses and magic items for players, which is very tricky whenever you have a product that, monsters are obviously exclusively for the DM, and then subclasses are exclusively for players. So this kind of makes it an all-in-one product. And yes, they are all animal-based, so based on the beasts we just had in the first half of the monster supplement. The Barbarian Path of the Leviathan Hunter is fine. You get swim speed. You have you can rage, and you're better at attacking bigger creatures, and eventually you can enlarge yourself. The Druid Circle of the Old Ways empowers your wild shape, but I'm not sure it's actually better than Circle of the Moon because you don't still get the ability to wild shape into better creatures, so that's kind of an odd balancing problem. I do like the Circle of Swarming, though. You can just turn into a swarm of creatures, and all of your shit is based on being able to swarm and talk to swarms, and eventually even swarm as a reaction, all that cool stuff. That's all very cool abilities. The Monk Nature's Warden borrows basically from the Barbarian Path of the Beast, in that you can kind of enter a beast, they call it a feral battle trance. It very much feels like a copy of that Barbarian subclass, because you gain like your claws, enlarge, and you can attack with your claws and all those things. It's okay, but we've kind of been there, done that. The Ranger Animal Lord is probably the best idea here. It lets you choose a type of beast that you are bonded to, and then you will gain new abilities as you ascend through the levels. They're called evolutions. The bonds are called wild aspects. So you can be an ape lord, a bear lord, a bird lord, and you'll get different, skill check proficiencies and different abilities. That's a really neat idea, and there's actually a ton of options here. There's like over half a dozen. The bummer is kind of like the dragons are a bit copy and pasted. So like you always gain like a attack. It's either a bite attack or a claw attack, or maybe a poison bite attack or something, depending on what it is. And then your other ability is maybe a little bit more unique to do with like moving around. And then the third ability is just you get a bonus to your attribute. So they're all kind of, I was hoping they were a little bit more unique from each other, but I guess you kind of have to balance them with each other. But I still think that's a pretty cool idea. And then magic items, we get about 10 or so, maybe about a dozen. Some of them are actually further earlier in the supplement, where when we talked about the electric eel, I talked about there was an armor you can actually craft from it called the electric eel hide, which you could do like electric, lightning damage as a reaction and stuff. There's a set with the whole squid motif, which is pretty neat. If you've got the helmet, then all the other items have new abilities and are expanded. All of those are really great things. I'm not even going to go over it much because this is all like in addition to what we already just got, which is a monster with over 50 beasts and dragons. So this is all kind of, I don't want to say it's tacked on. It's still, legitimately well designed and thought out. It's just all extra in addition to, which is all a huge plus for me. Let's go over my pros and cons for... What is the freaking name of this thing? Eoth Khalstan's Revised Encyclopaedia of Great Animals and Draconic Beings. God, too long of a goddamn title. Pro, over 30 beast stat blocks inspired by real-world, prehistoric, and mythological creatures. Pro, over 25 new dragons, including nearly 20 planar dragons, each with unique layer actions, although I think the layer actions are probably the only really cool part about those dragons. Pro, 5 new animal-inspired subclasses. Pro, over 10 new bestial magic items. And pro, wonderful sketchbook-style original artwork for each entry. I really do love the way this whole product is laid out. I think that honestly does a lot for me in terms of giving me all that art. It's really, really good art, sketchwork art for everything. And just the fact that it's just professionally designed. It's got like the stat blocks there with the nice sidebar. We occasionally get little, animal factoids as well as through the text itself. I think it's really a good looking product. Cons, I think there's a missed opportunity to inject some more personality via the Eoth Khalstan person. Anytime you ever have a product where it's so-and-so's whatever, Mordenkainen's whatever, Tasha's whatever, I want to see that person in the actual book. I want to see them writing in the margins and have them introducing things and allow that character's personality to come forward. I think that's really fun for the reader. In this case, we don't get any of the sidebar margin things. We do get a little bit of personality into the description itself, which is very nice. But I would have preferred if the designer had gone even further and made it like really gone with like, you know, the italicized like story text, because I like that angle of that early 20th century, you know, explorer out there actually cataloging all these beasts and animals and writing down anecdotes and observing what they're doing. And I think that would be a really cool angle to have. I just thought that was a missed opportunity, given that the book looks exactly like it should be that, but then we don't really get that kind of storytelling from it. And the other con is specifically for the dragons. They're really copy and pasted from each other. As cool as it is to have all these abyssal inspired dragons, and the actual like artwork is really neat, and the descriptions are really cool, and the planes they come from are all really neat. You know, I'm recognizing a lot of them, like Stygia and the, you know, realms of the abyss and the astral sea and all these things. The actual stat blocks are almost the exact same for all of these dragons. And it's partly why I don't think dragons are that interesting of a creature, because you can just take that basic mold and then you just kind of switch out one or two things, like, oh, this is a dragon of whatever, this is a dragon of this, this is a dragon of that. So maybe it's a problem with me and dragons, or maybe it's a problem of these dragons specifically just being a little too copy and pasted from each other, but I'm including that as a con regardless. Final verdict: with a breezy writing style full of fun animal facts, lovely original sketch art, and a huge amount of extra player content, Eoth Khalstan's revised Encyclopaedia of Great Animals and Draconic Beings proves a worthy supplement from the two more boring creature types. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel, and you can support my work at patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Shouts to Platinum patrons: Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Wizard, Princess, Christopher, Thomas, Captain Mike, Adam, Aiden, Stan, Nathan, Alex, Chad, Alexander, Dan, Cam, Quizat, Hatterack, and James. And gold patrons: RPG, Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Dead Lizard, Lounge, Samara, Slumpy Spuds, Jerome, Scalia, Nick, Party Butterpants, Blood Angel, Bronus, Baboon, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, and James. Thank you all very much for your support.